Hello there, it's Fiona from Weekly Sewing Bee. So today I am going to copy a favourite t-shirt. So I have my armholes there, and basically I've just traced around this t-shirt. So what I do need to do is I need to differentiate. Anyway, I need to do the front neckline. So what I'm doing, whilst it's still folded, is I'm pulling out one of the halves. I'm now lying that down, and all I need to do is to take an extra bit off the front. Not a lot. I don't want it low cut, but I do want it so with a definite front and a back. And obviously my scissors now need sharpening. Okay, so we've just taken a little triangle out, nothing much. I can put that in the bin. So I'm going to lay these out so that I've got the right side to the right side. And literally I'm just going to join these two together. So I've got my shoulder here, and I'm going to use the overlocker for this. Main reason is that you really need to. Now this is very thin stretch material, so I have to be very conscious that I don't pull it when I sew. Now it is slightly harder when you're doing thinner fabrics than these stretch ones, but still very worthwhile. So what I've done is, rather than take it out and put it back in again, I have lined up my side seam. So, and then it's just a matter of watching for the roll, so make sure that I'm actually trimming it with my overlocker blade and then sewing down. Now, not only really if you're doing stretch t-shirts, really stretchy material, do you need an overlocker, you also need a sewing machine with either a stretch stitch or at least a zigzag stitch. So every now and again I'm just adjusting it so that I can continue sewing. Now not only am I going to do the main seams in this, I'm also going to run around the bottom just so that it makes it easier to turn up, so I've got something to grip onto when I sew. And that is literally one layer of fabric, and I'm going to go all the way around the bottom. Okay, so back to the main make. So I have my sleeves here. Now they're only little corner sleeves, but we still need to do them. Well, you know, there's no two ways about it. If we're going to put sleeves on, we're going to put sleeves on. And it makes it kind of easier to sew the armholes, if even though there's only little sleeves. So what I've done there is I've folded it so it's ready to be sewn into the main garment. Oh! So I've got my little sleeve, and I have the hole here to sew it into, so let's just cut that off, and you can see that that's just a normal sleeve hole. I'm going to take the sleeve and I'm going to turn it inside out, and I'm then going to place the top of the cut sleeve and then just visually line it up. Now the reason I'm doing this is I'm kind of checking that I've got it all the right way round. I have taken sleeves before and I've done one fine, and then the next one I've sewn in the actual armhole rather than the sleeve hole. So now that I'm sure that I've got it the right way round, I can see the seam of the sleeve sticking through and the body of the t-shirt. I'm going to get it in the sewing machine, and then I'm going to adjust it round. Now, yeah, it's super stretchy material, so not only am I making sure that I'm not stretching it, but I'm also making sure that it's not being stretched because it's caught up somewhere. Now this is quite simple. Every now and again, make sure it's flat, make sure you're only sewing what you want to sew, and then teasing it round. So I've lined it up with the top, and I'm just coming to the top now, and I can get that little bit sewn. I'm going to go over the previous seam, making sure that I've got everything that I want sewn, and then I'm just adjusting it down for the last bit. And what I do want to do is, at the bottom where I join it together, I want to make sure that there's no gathering or pull at the bottom. If there is any slight adjustments to be made, then I'm going to make those at the top. So I'm going to cut off the untidy seam as well, and there we are. So far we have pretty much half the garment finished, and I'm just going to pause the camera and I'm going to do the other side and the other arm, and I'll be back with you to sew on the sewing machine. Hi, welcome back. So I've done all my overlocking, including my strip along the bottom, and we're just going to make a start in hemming the sleeves. So I've got my sleeve here. I'm going to fold it once, I'm going to fold it twice, and I'm going to place it under the foot. Now if you stretch this fabric, it kind of rolls up, but yeah, so I've I've folded that much, so I'm going to sew that much. I'm going to readjust the whole garment so that I don't put weight on the machine, and then I'm going to sew that much. Now I've got this machine set up with a zigzag stitch, the smallest zigzag that I can do, or you'd have to use a stretch stitch. If you just did a normal stitch, if there was any pull on the fabric, then you would literally just pop that seam, and all your hours wasted really. So just adjusting it as I go, making sure that I don't catch this bottom bit as well, and then fingers crossed it all joins up. Now I've got the thinnest needle as well. That's recommended when you're doing this sort of stitches. Now what I'm going to do as well is I'm going to double hem it. Now rather than set it up with a double needle, I'm going to do it top stitch. Now this just helps it to lie flat, and it just gives it a nicer finish, and I really would recommend it with every t-shirt. So I'm just lining it up with the previous line of stitches, and I'm sewing it again. And yeah, it really does need to be done, and it does give you just such a nicer finish. Now the bottom, I did a row of overlock because I could, and it just means that now, rather than rolling it once, twice, and for everything to be able to go wrong, I can just roll it once and I can sew over this line of stitches. So it makes life an awful lot easier. Because when you're doing a large amount, it would be a case of it'd start rolling and you'd end up sort of just sewing along there, and you wouldn't be able to keep it straight, not without a lot of concentration. So yes, what I'm going to do is just follow that round, not that hard at all, and then I'm going to go back and I'm going to top stitch it. So that's what I'm going to do. But I think the most difficult thing of the whole sew is the neckline. So I'm going to take my scissors, just put that up way, And I'm going to get rid of these because they're just going to make it bulky. Make sure that's tidy and make sure that I'm happy with that line. So when I cut it with cut it a bit short really, so, and I don't really want those sharp corners there. So just tidied that up. This just means that I've got a better surface to sew on. Now I have a strip of fabric. You do need to make sure that it's long enough at least, okay, just to go all the way around. And I'm going to take my machine. I'm going to start not exactly halfway on the back, but I'm going to start like 3/4 of the way round. It just means that the start and the end aren't in a predominant place, so they're not too odd. Okay, I folded this in half. It's about 2 inches. I know it's quite hard to see because it just curls up, but you can see it's just a 2-inch strip, and I folded it in half. And I'm going to place that along the edge of the rough neckline for the inside. Okay. And again, sew a bit, adjust a bit. Make sure that you're getting both the layers of the folded fabric, the binding, and the actual shirt. Follow it round. And also, I'm trying not to stretch it. Now, okay, the pattern I love, so I'm going for this T-shirt material, but ideally I would go for a thicker type of material. It's just so much easier to sew. So much easier to sew. But we just have to take our time. So I'm just coming along the top line of the back now. Every time I adjust it, I'm kind of rolling it in my fingers just to make sure it's flat. Sew that bit. And I am just coming back to the beginning of where I started. So as I knew that I had enough, I'm just going to trim the excess off now. And then back to the beginning. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the whole garment, I'm going to turn it the right way round, and this is what it looks like from the back. So I have my join here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it over and sew round again. Okay, let's get it in the machine so I can get my hands free. Now what I want is a consistent fold, so I can either do it so that I can just see the inside of the material or round. But whatever fold you do, you then have to, every few inches, adjust your fold. So we're going round now, and obviously there's a few layers here. There's 2 layers, and maybe I'm catching the seam as well. So we just have to let the machine take its time. Just glance that they're actually doing the stitches. So I'm going across the seam there, and I'm just making sure that everything is tucked in and that I'm not over sewing it. What I mean by over sewing it is I'm not pulling this binding all the way down there and distorting the neckline. So nice even stitches and a nice even turn. So keep on going round till I get back to the beginning. Now we're just on the curb here, so what I'm doing is I'm going that way, and then when I've hit the curb I can start going the other way. So that's that done, and then I can start going up. Now if you have a pin to hand, make sure that all my loose ends are tucked in. Then that's great, because we're coming back to the beginning, and this is why I do it sort of 3/4 of the way round the back, because if you put it exactly in the middle then it would really show. So I'm just folding that over, making sure everything's tucked in, and then I will literally continue sewing along that same length of stitches, just for 3 or 4 stitches, just to keep it all nice. And if you do have a pin to hand, you can sort of make sure you push your edges in and make it a lot neater. Okay, so that's all in position. I've just got to trust the machine to sew, making sure that I'm not catching it underneath and catching it under the machine so that it stretches the material. Alright, so that's 100% joined now. Okay, I'm going to take it out of the machine, and then I'm going to start stitching a parallel line of stitches. Now this is just to make sure that it lies flat. If we just do one, then it won't. So start wherever you like, and then you can either go on either side of that stitch line. So I know it's quite possible to make a t-shirt. And it's quite possible to make a t-shirt in any type of t-shirting material. The thinner it is, the more care you have to take. And you do have to remember your hem allowance when you're cutting. And when you are cutting, I would recommend that you do it on a very flat surface, and you either pin it or you weight it down well. So there we are. I'm just coming back to where I started doing the second row of stitches. Now I still have to finish the hem at the bottom, and I still have to do both sleeves because I've only done one. But that's easy enough. I'm sure it's the more difficult bit that we need to worry about. So let's lie this out. And there we have one little puffy sleeve, which is all I need, and I'm quite happy with that. Obviously it would be just as easy to make a long sleeve. We would just follow the pattern of the other one. And yeah, so I don't know what to say really. Give it a go, I think. And if you can borrow an overlocker, then do. I did buy mine for second hand, and I did take the attitude that if I never use it, then because I only paid for it second hand, it won't be too much of a problem. And yeah, I do use it, so it's well worth its weight in gold. And I also thought that if I use it all the time, I'd buy myself a new one, but I haven't yet. Thanks ever so much for watching.